Okay, so today we're taking a deep dive into something uh, quite interesting. I'd say a European startup that, yeah, one of our listeners brought to our attention.
Yeah.
It's called OTTIMEDIA. And from what I've been able to gather so far, well, it's either going to be incredibly innovative or just incredibly ambitious.
I think ambitious is probably a good word for it, for sure. Automedia's goal is to really completely change outdoor advertising as we know it.
Hmm.
And they're planning to do this with a very specific technology, transparent LED video walls.
Okay.
And right out of the gate, they're already talking about, becoming a unicorn,
Wow.
hitting that billion-dollar valuation as a private company.
A unicorn with transparent screens. That's a pretty compelling image, I have to say.
Yeah.
So we've got a lot to dig into today. We've got their project presentation, their business plan, and we've even got some insights directly from the founder, Nicola Teddy himself.
Oh, wow.
So for everyone listening today, our mission is to find out, is OTTIMEDIA a real deal, groundbreaking investment opportunity, or is this mostly hype?
Exactly. We really want to separate, the bold claims from the reality.
Yeah.
And see, what the potential is here.
All right, so let's get into it. What exactly is OTTIMEDIA proposing with these transparent LED video walls?
So basically, they're looking at installing and then managing these large-scale LED video displays. But the key difference here, the innovation, is that these video walls are transparent.
Okay.
So imagine like a giant screen on the side of an office building.
Right.
But you can still see through it from the inside.
Okay, so it's not completely like replacing windows or anything like that.
Right, exactly. It's integrated with the existing structure.
Mm.
And they're very much highlighting that transparency as a key selling point.
Okay, so the transparency is a big part of this. And their plan is to use existing buildings, right? They're not going to be building new structures for these screens.
That's right. Their strategy is to really leverage that existing infrastructure of office towers that you see in major cities globally.
Okay.
This could potentially give them some pretty big advantages in terms of logistics and permitting compared to, having to build entirely new advertising structures.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, you're not starting from scratch.
Right.
You already have these huge, skyscrapers essentially just waiting to be outfitted with these screens.
Exactly.
Okay, so transparent screens on skyscrapers, got it. Now, let's talk about the numbers, because this is where things get really interesting. I would even say eye-opening.
Yeah.
They're claiming that their advertising prices are going to be up to 120 times lower
120 times.
than their competitors.
That's what they're stating?
I mean, 120 times. How is that even possible?
It's a bold claim for sure, and they elaborate on it in their blog.
Okay.
But essentially what they're saying is they believe this massive price difference is going to be a huge draw for TV advertisers.
Okay.
And it's going to entice them to basically allocate their budget to these outdoor displays instead.
That makes sense. I mean, if you can get the same kind of reach, or maybe even better reach, at a fraction of the cost,
right?
Why wouldn't you consider it?
Exactly. And that's, that's the bet they're making.
Yeah, but 120 times cheaper, that just seems almost too good to be true.
Well, that's the thing, right? It begs the question, how are they able to achieve such a drastic reduction in cost?
Right.
What are their underlying cost structures? Is it even sustainable?
Yeah.
Or, could this trigger some kind of price war in the industry that ends up undercutting them in the long run?
That's a really good point, because if you come in and disrupt the market like that,
right,
the existing players are not just going to sit back and watch their market share disappear.
Exactly. They're going to have to respond in some way.
Yeah. And it's not just the price that's unusual here. They're also proposing that these TV advertisers pay for a full year of advertising up front.
Yes, that's a huge departure from the typical way things are done in TV advertising.
Right. Usually it's shorter-term deals, maybe a few months at a time.
Exactly.
But they're asking for a year up front.
And that would require a major shift in how these TV advertising budgets are allocated and managed.
Absolutely. So that's another big question mark is, are advertisers actually going to be willing to make that kind of commitment?
Right.
All right. So this upfront payment model is really the foundation for their first-year revenue projections.
Yes.
Which are, well, they're pretty substantial. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, they're quite optimistic.
They're projecting a range of anywhere from $180 million
wow,
all the way up to $900 million in their first year.
That's a huge gap.
It is a huge gap. I mean, it almost makes you wonder, how much confidence do they really have in their own numbers if there's that much variability?
Right. It suggests a very high level of uncertainty
Yeah.
in their ability to actually, secure clients and generate that revenue.
And then we get to their valuation targets, which are even more ambitious.
Yeah, ambitious is putting it mildly.
They're projecting a $4 billion valuation in their first year.
Okay.
Then just 2 years later, it jumps to $12 billion.
Wow.
And within 10 years, they're aiming for a $40 billion valuation.
Those are some incredibly steep growth curves.
Yeah, it's exponential growth. I mean, it's almost unheard of.
It is. And for you listening, it's important to remember that a company's valuation is essentially an estimate of its worth based on current performance and future potential.
Yeah.
So these kinds of projections, they rely on a lot of assumptions
Yeah.
about how quickly the market is going to adopt this technology and their ability to actually execute their plans perfectly.
Yeah. I mean, they're assuming everything goes right.
Right.
No hiccups along the way.
No major delays, no unexpected costs, everything just falls into place.
Okay, so we've talked about the big picture numbers. Now let's get into the specifics of how people can actually get involved.
Okay.
What kind of investment opportunities are they presenting?
So they've outlined a couple of key options. One is direct equity in OTTIMEDIA itself.
Okay.
They're offering a 15% stake for a $6 million investment or a 24% stake for $9 million.
So you can get a pretty decent chunk of the company for that kind of investment.
Yeah, that's a significant portion of the ownership.
What else are they offering?
Interestingly, they're also proposing the acquisition of an existing LED video wall manufacturer.
Oh, okay.
They're asking $3 million for 100% ownership, and they claim that this company is actually worth $7 million.
So they're saying you could basically double your money right out of the gate.
That's the implication, yeah.
Interesting. Okay, and then after this potential acquisition, they're planning to go for some pretty big EU funding, right?
That's right. They're going to apply for 30 million euros in innovation fund from the European Union.
And that EU funding has some pretty sweet terms, as I understand it.
Yeah, it does. They emphasize that 60% of that 30 million euros would be non-repayable. So essentially a grant, and then the remaining 40% would be repayable, but not until after the second year of operation and at a very low interest rate of just 1.5%.
So you're basically getting a huge chunk of money that you don't even have to pay back.
Right. It's a very attractive offer in terms of the financing.
Yeah, and on top of that, OTTIMEDIA is really making a point about transparency for their investors.
Yes, they state very clearly that all financial transactions, all movements will be accessible online.
Okay.
And all those investment funds will be held in a joint company account, not a personal account.
That does give you some peace of mind knowing that you can actually track where your money's going.
Right. It creates a sense of accountability.
Yeah, so we've got these potential investment paths, and they're offering these guarantees. Joint ownership, the possibility of EU funding, and this financial transparency. But the big question for anyone listening is, do these assurances really outweigh the inherent risks of investing in a startup, especially one with such big ambitions and such a new approach?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, right?
Yeah.
I mean, those elements might offer some benefits or mitigate some risks.
Sure.
But they certainly don't eliminate the fundamental uncertainty of investing in a brand new venture.
Exactly. And when you look closer at their projections, some things really stand out.
Okay.
That massive range in their first-year revenue projection, anywhere from 180 million to 900 million.
Yeah.
That, to me, feels like a huge red flag. It just suggests that even they don't really know how much money they're going to make.
Right. It indicates a lack of clarity in their own financial model.
Yeah, and their entire strategy hinges on convincing TV advertisers to completely change how they do business.
Exactly. They want them to adopt this annual upfront payment model for a type of advertising that is completely new and unproven.
And we've already talked about how that's a major shift from how things are typically done in TV advertising.
Right. And it's a big ask.
Yeah, it is, because you're essentially asking these big companies to divert their budgets away from things that they already know work.
Exactly. And OTTIMEDIA isn't entering an empty market either.
Right.
I mean, the advertising world, both outdoor and digital, is already incredibly competitive.
It is.
There are well-established players with a lot of resources.
So you're not just going to roll over.
Right. OTTIMEDIA would have to not only introduce this new medium,
Right.
but also convince advertisers to leave those existing relationships and try something completely new.
And all of this is assuming that these transparent LED video walls actually work the way they say they do.
Exactly, and that they can be implemented on a large scale without any major problems.
Right, because think about it. We're talking about installing these huge screens on office towers all over the world.
And it's not just the installation. You have to think about the ongoing maintenance and the upkeep.
Right.
These are sophisticated screens that are going to require regular attention.
And then you have to navigate all the city regulations, the building code.
All the permits, the inspections.
Yeah, it's a logistical nightmare, potentially.
It could be. And then, of course, there's the whole issue of energy consumption.
Right, because they talk about using green energy.
Yes, but even with the most efficient technology, these giant LED screens are going to use a lot of power.
Yeah, and they're going to be running constantly.
24/7.
So it's something to really think about. How sustainable is this really?
And they need to be very clear about where that energy is coming from.
Exactly. Vague promises about green energy aren't enough.
No, they need to have concrete plans.
Okay, so we've talked about the risks. Now, let's shift gears for a moment and talk about the potential upside.
Okay.
Let's imagine that even if they only achieve a fraction of their stated goals, what kind of impact could OTTIMEDIA actually have?
Well, visually, I think the impact on our cities could be pretty dramatic.
Yeah,
Imagine skylines with these massive, dynamic, colorful, transparent displays.
yeah.
It would definitely change the way our cities look and feel.
It would be a completely different experience walking down the street.
And if they can actually deliver on their promise of much lower advertising costs.
That 120 times cheaper claim?
Right, that could completely disrupt the entire advertising industry.
Yeah, because suddenly you have this new medium.
That's much more affordable.
And potentially even more effective than traditional billboards or TV ads.
And it's not just about selling products either.
Right.
These screens could be used for public art,
Yeah,
public service announcements, real-time news and information.
it could be a whole new way to communicate with the public.
Exactly. And OTTIMEDIA even mentions that they would allocate a portion of their advertising space for free
Oh, wow.
to nonprofit organizations.
That's great.
So there's a social responsibility aspect to their model as well.
So it's not just about making money. It's about, making a positive impact on the world.
That's what they're saying.
Okay, so the potential impact is huge. It could change how we experience our cities, how we interact with information, how advertising works.
It's a very ambitious vision.
It is. Now, for anyone listening who is thinking about investing in this, what kind of due diligence would you recommend? Because OTTIMEDIA seems to have a very unique perspective on this.
That's an important point because their founder, Nicola Teti, actually suggests that standard due diligence is not really useful or really necessary
Wow.
because of their innovative, unique business model.
So basically they're saying that the traditional ways of evaluating a company don't apply to them.
Right, because their approach is so new, so revolutionary.
But that should be a huge red flag for any investor.
It should, because you always want to do your own research.
Exactly.
You want to look beyond the hype.
And the fact that they're a young startup with very little financial data available makes due diligence even more important.
Absolutely. You want to see the track record. You want to understand the financials.
They also make this claim that once their first big LED wall is operational, they'll recover their entire investment within weeks without even doing any marketing.
Yeah, that's another very bold claim,
And very unusual.
to say the least.
Because typically it takes time to build up a customer base.
And to generate that kind of revenue
So for them to say that it'll happen almost instantly,
without any marketing spend.
yeah, that's just not realistic in most cases.
And while they compare their vision to Nikola Tesla,
Right.
Drawing parallels to these great inventors,
Yep.
it doesn't replace the need for solid business fundamentals.
Exactly. A good idea, not enough.
You need a plan.
So anyone listening, do your own research. Don't just take their word for it.
Absolutely.
Look into the founder, Nicola Teti, his background, his experience.
Does he have a proven track record of success?
Exactly. Has he done this before?
What's his expertise in advertising and technology?
Yeah, those are all important questions to ask.
And then there's the whole sustainability angle.
Right, because they talk about using green energy. They mention a partnership for solar panels.
Yeah, but again, they need to be specific.
Exactly what kind of solar panels?
What are the details of this partnership?
How much of their energy will actually come from renewable sources?
Those are the important questions.
Because vague promises aren't enough?
No.
Okay, so as we wrap up here, we've explored the huge potential that OTTIMEDIA is presenting and what they claim are practically imperceptible real risks. What's your final assessment for our listener who's trying to make sense of all of this?
Well, the concept of these transparent LED video walls is definitely innovative.
Yeah.
And it could be disruptive.
Right.
But the scale of their ambitions,
It's huge.
it is. And their reliance on this unproven payment model and their very casual approach to due diligence,
Yeah.
those are all major red flags.
So proceed with caution.
A lot of caution.
Ask tough questions.
Don't be swayed by the promise of huge returns.
Because ultimately, you're responsible for your own financial decisions.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground today. We've looked at their ambitious plans, their financial projections, their claims of minimal risk, the guarantees they're offering, and their vision for the future.
It's a complex picture.
It is, and while the potential rewards are definitely there,
The risks are real.
so as always, we encourage you to do your own research, think critically about everything we've discussed, and come to your own conclusions.
Stay informed, stay curious, and don't hesitate to dig deeper into anything that sparks your interest.
Excellent advice. So thanks for joining us for this deep dive into OTTIMEDIA. Now, considering their vision of transforming cities with these transparent displays, how might this technology, if it's even partially successful, change not just the advertising industry, but our entire relationship with public faces and visual information in the years to come? It's a question worth thinking about.
Yeah, it is.
Right, until our next deep dive, keep exploring.
Keep asking those tough questions.